The asylum does not mean that you get a golden ticket to come to the United States and then you have your anchor babies with birthright citizenship and then you get your Medicaid and welfare and you're set up for life. They're going to have to fix this because they allowed these activist judges to run wild. They're emboldened. And this Judge Moss is giving the big middle finger to John Roberts. We are a welcoming nation. We are a nation of immigrants, but we are not stupid. We're not going to get played. And again, this is a red line.
This is Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags.
Massive wins for President Trump in the Supreme Court, and then a couple of setbacks as you've got activist judges continuing to try to legislate from the bench and stop the executive through the Article 3, powers of the judicial, which they really can't do unless it's the Supreme Court. Wanted to get with Mike Davis, the founder over at article3project.org, and later it's going to be Brianna Morello to update us on what happened in that Diddy trial. It was a monumental week last week for the Trump administration as far as wins in the Supreme Court, and just a little cherry on top was Amy Coney Barrett going after Ketanji Brown Jackson. I thought that was pretty great. Those rulings were correct, of course. We were all on pins and needles because you never know what John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett are going to do, but they did the right thing, and the Trump administration gets these wins. And then today, some other idiot says some other stupid thing. So we've got to bring in a guy who's not an idiot, the guy who runs article3project.org. It is our friend Mike Davis. Mike, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me.
Always appreciate having you. I know that you just heard about this ruling. I want to present it the best I can. Today, a U.S. District Judge, Randolph D. Moss, in Washington, D.C., ruled that President Trump's January 20th, 2025 proclamation, which blocked migrants crossing the southern border from claiming asylum or other humanitarian protections, exceeded his executive authority. 128-page opinion, Mike, where he basically is saying you cannot say people can't come across the border illegally and then say, hey, I'm here for asylum. What do you make of it? Just on the periphery, just from what I read, what do you make of that?
Look, President Trump campaigns on the fact that he is going to seal our border from Biden's illegal mass invasion of over 20 million illegal aliens. And the American people liked what they heard, and they gave President Trump a broad electoral mandate, 312 electoral votes, all 7 swing states, the popular vote. He kept the House. He won a comfortable majority in the Senate. And President Trump is doing what he promised American voters he would do. He's protecting our border from this foreign invasion, and he's making sure that we expel these illegal aliens, focusing on the most vicious and violent ones like MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. You have these activist Democrat judges who have tried to sabotage him every step of the way. The Article 3 Project just put out a new tracker on this, judicial sabotage tracker on our website that goes through these hundreds of injunctions that these lawless judges are issuing. And today's ruling by Judge Moss is a continuation of that. The Supreme Court just ruled 6-3 that these judges cannot issue these nationwide injunctions. It exceeds the judicial power of these activist judges. Their job is to decide cases and controversies of the parties properly before them with redressable claims. Nothing more, nothing less. That is their judicial power under Article 3. This D.C. Democrat judge, Moss, just ignored the Supreme Court and said that the president cannot control these asylum claims. Look, everyone who comes across the border is trained to raise these bogus asylum claims. And so right. If they're asylum seekers, why are they fighting age men coming across our border making asylum claims? Why would they leave their wife and children back in their home countries if they're going to be persecuted? This is all bogus. These claims are bogus by these asylum seekers. They are playing a game to get into our country, and President Trump is fulfilling his constitutional duty as the commander-in-chief to repel this foreign invasion.
This so-called Judge Moss in D.C., as you said. And by the way, go to article3project.org. He's also started judicialsabotage.org. Go check that out as well. But this D.C. judge went on to say, you can't have an alternative immigration system. You can't circumvent the Constitution. You can't circumvent law. Again, I'm confused about this. What he's saying doesn't make any sense because literally Asylum internationally means you stop at the first country where you feel safe. If they're coming from Mexico to the United States, Mexico is a democratic society. It is allegedly a safe place. They're not running from Mexico because a tyrant took over, something like that. They have no right to keep on coming into our country. Why doesn't any of that ever play into this, Mike? I mean, literally, you can say in Venezuela, they're going to cut my head off if I don't leave. Okay, I'll hear you. Or in Cuba, or in North Korea, or whatever. Not from Mexico.
And that's just it. If you're coming from South or Central America and you're traveling by foot through Mexico for many weeks, it sounds like it's pretty safe for you in Mexico. So
Stop there. Yeah.
You should stop there. That was President Trump's remain in Mexico policy. You go to the first country that you're safe, right? And the asylum does not mean that you get a golden ticket to come to the United States and then you have your anchor babies with birthright citizenship, and then you get your Medicaid and welfare and you're set up for life. We did not agree to this as the American people. We, the people, are the sovereign. We the people, are this. We have the sovereign power, and the most fundamental sovereign power is controlling our border and controlling our populace. And we, the people, never gave these courts our sovereign power to let this mass invasion into our country. We didn't do it at our founding with the Fifth Amendment. We didn't do it after the Civil War with the 14th Amendment. We didn't do it in any subsequent Congress. And we certainly didn't do it in this last election. We are being played by these migrants. They're all pretending like they're being persecuted. Again, if they're being persecuted, why did they leave their wife and kids back home?
It's a great question. It's Mike Davis, MRDDMIA, over on all the social media. Go to article3project.org and the new website, judicialsabotage.org. Just to put a fine bow on this one, Mike, the judge went on to say, well, the order is going to be delayed for 2 weeks while the Trump administration appeals, but he certified asylum seekers as a class, protecting all of them under law. Can he do that?
No, he can't do that. There are very strict rules under the federal rules of civil procedure. You can't do snap certifications of a class like that. You have to have class proceedings under the federal rules under Rule 23, the federal rules of civil procedure. This is lawless. This is just the judges trying to get around the Supreme Court's nationwide injunction order, and they're trying to do it through class actions. The Supreme Court needs to stop this. How many times is John Roberts going to let these Democrat activist judges sabotage the American people and our duly elected president? Because I'll tell you this, if John Roberts does not get his judicial house in order, and very fast, particularly on this foreign invasion, Congress is going to do it for him.
Now, what literally can John Roberts do? Can he impeach, remove? I mean, what does he have the right to do?
He can issue a stay. This is going to go up to a circuit court. The circuit court should stay this. And if the circuit court does not stay this, then it needs to go to the Supreme Court on the emergency docket. I know that the Supreme Court justices are exhausted. They just finished their term and they're on their summer vacations. But they're going to have to fix this because they allowed these activist judges to run wild. They're emboldened. And this Judge Moss is giving the big middle finger to John Roberts. And so is he going to allow this to happen?
Well, the question is, does he have the right to circumvent everything and say, hey, Moss, what are you doing? Knock it off, or we're staying this immediately. Or does he have to wait till it gets to him?
They did it before when on Good Friday, when the Supreme Court used the All Writs Act before the district court ruled, before the Fifth Circuit ruled, the Supreme Court used the All Writs Act to stop the president from expelling MS-13 gangbangers in Tren de Aragua. So they have the power if they want to use it. So I would say to the Supreme Court, you're being played by these activist judges. The American people see it. The emperor has no clothes. And when the Supreme Court loses its legitimacy, it loses everything. The American people, if you look at the polling, are getting very tired of illegal aliens. They're getting very tired of judicial sabotage. And when the Supreme Court and the lower federal courts lose the American people, they lose everything.
Judicialsabotage.org is the new website. Article3project.org is the website for Mike. It's also his organization. Go and support everything they do. So let's talk about the ruling from last week. It did not have to do with birthright citizenship. People freaked out. You've literally got people now on MSNBC, CNN, on TikTok claiming that President Trump can now individually just remove us from our citizenship and kick us out of the country. Of course, he can't do that. That ruling was about nationwide injunctions. You can't do it. You can set an injunction for the area where that case is being heard for that party that's bringing the case. That's it. You can't do nationwide. What's going to happen with birthright citizenship, though? Subject to the jurisdiction thereof is very clear to me, because those who are diplomats here in this country are not subject to our jurisdiction. Therefore, if they have children while they're here, they're not American citizens. Why then is somebody who's a foreign national who is tied to Italy or Canada or Mexico, why then is their child a citizen?
They shouldn't be. And this has been a misinterpretation of the birthright citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment for too long. Remember, after the Civil War, we had the Civil War amendments, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to outlaw slavery, to free the slaves, to give them due process of law, equal protection of law, and to give voting rights to the freed black slaves. And one of the provisions in the 14th Amendment was that the children of freed black slaves are American citizens.
Right.
That was the purpose of the birthright citizenship clause. And as you said, it talks about all persons born in the United States subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. That's the key, is subject to the jurisdiction. So the Supreme Court has extended it from slaves to lawful permanent residence kids in the Chinese exclusion case. And the Supreme Court's rationale was clear. You have to show allegiance to the United States. If you're a lawful permanent resident, the Supreme Court says you have allegiance to the United States. As you said, ambassadors and their kids do not have allegiance to the United States. They're not subject to the jurisdiction. The Supreme Court even held that American Indians were not subject to the jurisdiction, and they did not have birthright citizenship. So Congress had to fix that through statute. So if the birthright citizenship provision doesn't apply to American Indians, why the hell would it apply to illegal aliens?
What a great point. Will there have to be? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mike.
It's analogous to an invading army of foreigners like Tren de Aragua and MS-13. Should their kids get birthright citizenship? Hell no. They need to be deported along with their criminal parents.
What a great analogy. So in other words, if we're at war with somebody, some nation, let's say with Lithuania, and Lithuania invades, has a bunch of babies, they're just American citizens? I don't think so. I mean, that would be really stupid.
Yeah, and that's what's happening with 20 million illegal aliens who are coming here. They're invading our country illegally, unlawfully. They're having kids, anchor babies, and then their parents get a stay because of the kids, and then they get Medicaid. Why the hell are we doing this? Why?
And then chain migration, Mike. I mean, the aunt gets to come, and the cousin gets to come, and the grandpa gets to come. Suddenly you've got 30 people coming because you've got one American citizen in the family. That's what they've been doing, right?
Yeah, we are a nation of immigrants, but it needs to be through lawful immigration, where people come here lawfully. They assimilate. They come here slowly over time. They assimilate and they become part of America. These illegal aliens who are coming here, whether it's from Central America, South America, the Middle East especially, oftentimes they're not here to assimilate into American culture. They're here to destroy us. They're Trojan horses who are here to destroy us. You have places in Michigan where you have huge Middle Eastern Muslim populations where there are no-go zones. Why the hell do we want to import people into this country who hate us and want to destroy us? We don't. We had an election on this, and this is a bright red line for the Supreme Court and the lower federal courts. We, the people with the sovereign power in this country, the sovereign power to control our borders and to control our populace, this is a red line. We are not going to give up that sovereign power to these activist judges stealing that from we the people. This is unacceptable, and it's not going to end well for the federal judiciary.
MRDDMIA over on all the social media. Go to article3project.org and support what Mike and his folks do. Also go to the new website, judicialsabotage.org. In Hamtramck, Michigan, you're right. They've got the call to prayer 5 times a day, audibly throughout the city. Let me just finish on this. I believe it was Senator Howard from Michigan that insisted subject to the jurisdiction thereof was added. That was supposed to solve the problem. That was supposed to say, look, this is for slaves and their children. This is not for anybody who is a foreign national. Why did we ever screw that up? And was it recent that we did that, or from the time in the 1860s when this was adopted in the Constitution? They've been doing it the whole time.
No, they have not been doing it, but we haven't had an illegal alien invasion until recent times. And it became front and center when Joe Biden illegally mass imported 20 million illegal aliens into our country. And they're trying to replace our population. Yes, the replacement theory, as the Democrats call it. They are trying to replace our population with third world Marxist trash. We've spent 250 years building up wealth and building up the greatest nation in human history. And we are a welcoming nation. We are a nation of immigrants, but we are not stupid. We're not going to get played. And again, this is a red line for the federal judiciary. We are not going to allow federal judges to continue this mass invasion. The Supreme Court refused to stop President Biden in 2023 during this mass invasion. And we're sure the hell not going to let the Supreme Court stop President Trump in 2025 when he's trying to get these people the hell out of our country.
Will the Supreme Court rule in the correct way here, or is it going to take a statute or a law by Congress to say, the 14th Amendment, let's clear this up. This is only for these people, and say that these are people that are actually here permanently on some sort of a green card, people who are on the way to citizenship, people who actually, vow their allegiance with this country. Will it take Congress, or will the Supreme Court do the right thing?
Well, I would say this to the Supreme Court. This is the most basic covenants in our Constitution, that we, the people, are the sovereign. We have the sovereign power. We can lend that sovereign power to our federal government through our loan agreement called the Constitution, and we can divide that power between legislative power to Congress and the executive power to the president and judicial power to the Supreme Court. We, the people, never gave away that most basic sovereign power to control our border and to control our populace to these judges. We never did this. And if the Supreme Court takes us to the break, it's not going to end well for the Supreme Court and the federal judiciary. They're going to lose their legitimacy with the American people. When they lose their legitimacy, they lose everything.
It is Mike Davis, MRDDMIA, over on social media. He's the boss over at the Article 3 Project. Go and check out everything they do. Go support what he does as well. And judicialsabotage.org is the new website. The ruling that sort of got glossed over last week was that President Trump has the ability, and DHS has the ability, to send bad guys to a third-party nation that'll take them. The idea that you had to keep the bad guys here and you couldn't send them back because they didn't want to go to a third-party nation never made any sense to me at all. What was the argument that the left was making about this? It's too mean to send them to Sudan? I don't get it.
Yeah, they're saying that if you come from a country and you're claiming that country is going to persecute you because you go home, okay, then we'll send you to a different country. And that's going to end these bogus asylum claims instantaneously. And you know what? I want to say kudos to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, because he created Alligator Alcatraz, and we have 3,000 beds there for these people who are claiming asylum. You can either go to South Sudan or you can go to Alligator Alcatraz. Either one of them doesn't look terribly fun to me. So maybe the better option is just to go home to your wife and kids.
I made up a slogan yesterday, Mike. I need your thoughts on this. Alligator Alcatraz, try to leave, they'll bite your ass. No? I thought it was pretty good.
I think it's great. That's
I'm going to make a slide. I'll put it out front. Just dumb. I want to finish with this. I don't know anything about the Big Beautiful Bill and AI. What was included in the Big Beautiful Bill that's now out of it that you're glad is out of it about AI?
Well, I would say this, that the Article 3 project at 10 o'clock yesterday, the AI amnesty was in there, where the big tech oligarchs, the big tech monopolists, particularly Google and Meta, were trying to get 10 years of amnesty from Congress so the state and local governments could not pass laws or do anything against AI when these AI companies are ripping off everyone's creative content, harming kids, censoring conservatives. And there are a lot of surprising people in the Senate pushing this AI amnesty. And so the Article 3 project teamed up with Steve Bannon's War Room Posse and Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee, the great senator from Tennessee. And we went from 10 o'clock in the morning yesterday that this was definitely going to pass to it went down 99 to 1. So we kicked their asses, as we say in the legal world.
Yeah, well, I just want to make sure I understand it, because I've heard my voice on stuff that I haven't voiced, and that's not okay. So this literally will hold them accountable if somebody steals your face, your voice, your likeness, your content, the creativity, whatever you created. This will now give us a chance to sue them and be punished. Otherwise, we couldn't have sued them for 10 years?
Exactly. They would have made it hard to sue in state court for 10 years, and then there's little recourse in federal court. So that's the issue. I mean, you make your money at the way you can keep your lights on and pay your staff and keep this show going is you sell advertising. So if I go and say, hey, AI, give me a summary of Joe's media hits over the last 6 months, and it summarizes it for me, and it even uses your image, your voice, your likeness, and I'm not clicking on your website, you're not going to have advertising, and your show's going to go out of business, right? And that's the problem with this. And it's also, for example, you have these AI platforms, for example, that are these chat boxes are telling kids to kill their families and kill themselves, and these kids are actually doing this, and there's no recourse for the parents or the family. It's unacceptable, and we stopped it, but we have to stay on top of this because they keep doing this over and over and over. They're like hyenas that keep looking for a new opportunity to strike, and the Article 3 project is going to make damn sure this does not happen. I had to go to the White House. I had to go to Trump to stop this.
Well, I'm so glad you did, because I didn't realize that it was that bad. It was going to be a 10-year. Just do whatever you want, steal any content you want, put us out of business if you want. I mean, what a great analogy that you gave. Not even an analogy. That's really what would happen if we allowed it. And Mike, let me ask you this, and you probably know about this. Somebody contacted me a month ago. They said, "Hey, we'll pay you $22,000 over the next 10 years if you allow us to manage your voice and your likeness on your YouTube videos." And I said, "No, who are you? I have no idea what you're talking about." So now there are companies, and it sounds like these are not really good guys, that are going out there trying to get the rights to my voice and give me a few pennies on the dollar to say, "Hey, we got the right from PAGS, we can do it." Is that what you're now telling me is going on? Is that what they tried to do to me?
Yeah, and you couldn't sue the AI companies. They're profiting off of your content, your likeness, your voice, your image. They're profiting off of that, and you can't sue them in state court. You can't bring any state claims against them.
That makes no sense. I'm so glad you guys worked as hard as you did. Go and support everything Mike does. MRDDMIA over on all the social media. Go check them out, article3project.org, and donate. Keep them afloat, and make sure that they keep on doing the good work. They just saved me a lot of money, I think. And also go to judicialsabotage.org to find out what these bad guys and gals on these benches are doing to try to circumvent Article 2. Mike, thanks a million. Always appreciate the time, my friend.
Thank you very much.
And now independent journalist Brianna Morello, who's going to break down what happened in the Diddy trial. Why did the most serious charges go away? And why was he found not guilty on them? And then guilty on a couple of charges that she'll explain. Very interesting case. A lot of interest in this for sure. Is it important on the bigger scheme of things? Probably not, but sure is interesting. I'm confused about it. That's why I keep on bringing in this young lady. I don't know what's going on with Sean Combs. Did he didn't do it? I guess he's not guilty, but then he's guilty as well. Not guilty on the lesser charges. He's going to make an album soon. I have no idea what's going on with that case. That's why I always bring in my good friend Brianna Morello. She's an independent journalist. Go and check her out at Brianna Morello over on all the social media. How are you, Bri? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Joe. Yeah, it's a very confusing case, but that's why you keep me around as a friend, so I could break it down for you. So thank you.
It's the only reason I do. No, seriously, I'm on the treadmill today, and I'm looking at it, and it says not guilty, 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 guilty. No, I'm sorry. Not guilty, not guilty, 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 not guilty. So he's guilty of 2 things, not guilty of 3 things. But as bad as my eyes are, it appeared to be he was guilty of the lesser things. If you don't mind, because there are a lot of people watching this right now who just don't have any clue what this guy is accused of and what just happened. Can you nutshell what the case was, and then we'll break down why he's guilty or not?
Yeah, so the federal prosecutors charged him initially with 5 charges. 3 out of those 5 charges he was found not guilty on. Now, those were the more severe charges. We're talking racketeering, we're talking sex trafficking. Now, those are obviously big allegations, not guilty on those fronts. He was convicted, though, of transporting prostitution. which is prostitutes, obviously, but that's what he was found guilty on. So that's 2 cases on that front that he was found guilty on, 2 counts, I should say. So ultimately, what you're seeing here now is they were able to partially convict him, but not on the serious charges. Now, each of those 2 guilty convictions, he faces potentially up to 10 years. But again, he probably might not even see that because this is his first time being criminally convicted. So there's likely going to be, let's just say, probably a little more empathy from the judge on that front. They might go a little softer on him. But yeah, as you just heard, so 3 of them he was found not guilty on.
Well, you've been following this from the beginning, and were you as surprised as I was that suddenly they were dropping some of the charges? Wasn't he facing like 10 charges about 2 weeks ago? All of a sudden, a bunch of them went away. Then there were the final 5, guilty on 2, the lesser charges, and not guilty on 3. What were the original charges that went away, or am I making that up?
So what happened was the mainstream media messed it up. So they had their experts in the courtroom at the time, and I actually thought it was that the DOJ was dropping charges as well, and it was pushed out by Fox and TMZ, but it looks like that wasn't the case. What the judge and the prosecutors were doing were giving different instructions. So there were all these different testimonies heard. Over 30 people testified during the 2-month span trial. So what the judge and what the prosecutors wanted to do was just nix some of the testimony that the jury heard, and they were running through the list. So the mainstream media thought that meant they were dropping the charges, but it wasn't. They were just trying to get specific on certain things that they were looking to apply to those 5 counts.
It is Brianna Morello. Go to independentnewsroom.com and go follow things she does over on X and elsewhere. A great independent journalist. So as we're watching this case unfold, the feeling you got was that it was nasty, disgusting, but it was a bunch of adults doing it. And if they consented, then it's none of our business. And then it was about bringing in prostitutes. Then it was about possibly running some sort of a criminal empire. Those things went away. The racketeering stuff went away. But if I understand you right, if we say it in like street terms, he's been convicted of what? Being a pimp? That he was pimping out? What does the conviction really mean?
Transporting prostitutes. So they're just saying that he was transporting hookers is ultimately what they're convicting him on. That one could be up in the air because Cassie, which is his ex-girlfriend, admitted on the stand that she was the one who was handing the money to these male escorts and that they were ultimately being transported to certain locations to engage in these sex parties that Diddy was throwing. So it was kind of hard for them not to convict him on those 2 charges, I have to say. So it was between Cassie and another ex-girlfriend who I believe they used her name as Jane during the trial. Ultimately, though, the sex trafficking allegations didn't stick up because Cassie really did admit to playing a big role in all of this. Cassie, obviously a domestic violence victim. We saw that on the tape that was released of the LA when she was in LA with Diddy and she was getting beaten up by him. Obviously, that's horrific in itself. But the reality of it is she openly admitted on the stand that she was the one who did pay these male escorts. Now, whether she got that money from Diddy or not didn't really come up. But the reality of it is they were dating. So Diddy could have given her stacks of a couple of $1,000 pocket change for him. He's thinking she's going out to buy a nice bag, get her hair done, and she's using it to pay escorts. Now, again, that's not likely what happened, but they didn't really draw a direct correlation.
Well, Bree, might she be charged then?
Well, that's the thing too, right? Obviously, she is a victim of domestic violence, and they're saying that she was only sticking around for all these years. They were together for, I believe, a decade. So she only stuck around because she was a victim of abuse.
Right.
But again, I actually thought the prosecutors put a much stronger argument together going against Cassie than going against Diddy when it comes to that front because, they pulled up, and I believe this was the defense, they pulled up text messages that she was sending Diddy. And in those text messages, she's telling Diddy that she'd rather have a female escort for the next freak off rather than a male escort. Now, that sounds like to me that you are excited about being there. You love it because she said also in writing that she was very into the freak offs as well. We saw those text messages.
Oh, my goodness.
And then she's picking the escorts for the engagement. So again, yes, she is a victim to a certain extent, but they're not charging him with domestic violence here. They're strictly charging him with sex trafficking and racketeering. And Joe, racketeering, RICO, we all know that's a big criminal enterprise that they're describing when they hit you with that charge. But only Diddy was charged with racketeering, nobody else. It doesn't sound like a typical RICO case. And most attorneys can't even explain to you what RICO even is, right? There's so many times where they try to explain it and detail it, and they're unable to do so. So it's understandable that the jury wouldn't convict on that.
I'm going to see if I can go into my knowledge bank here. RICO basically is You've got a criminal organization where you've got levels of people that are involved in committing crimes, and if you can go after the top guns, either the boss of the crime family or the captains of the crime family, you can say anything the lower level people did can go against as a legal charge against those who are the bosses. That's how Rudy Giuliani took down the mafia families or the mob families in New York City, and he was very, very successful because, again, we know that the top dogs, though John Gotti wasn't actually pulling the trigger or he wasn't actually doing the deal, he had his lower level people doing it, but he ended up getting convicted because he was the one that was running the entire enterprise. So your point is that Diddy really wasn't a boss. He was doing it himself. He's one individual. How did they even think they can go RICO on that?
Yeah, I think the prosecutors were just throwing anything against the wall and hoping something would stick. Because when you hit someone with a RICO charge, you are able to obtain more evidence than you normally would in other cases. And so it does kind of give you an extension. That's the best way that most legal analysts have kind of described it. So that could be the reason why they hit him with the RICO charge, but they probably didn't expect to get a conviction on that front. I knew the first 2 weeks in that they weren't going to be able to convict him because they weren't laying out an argument. And I sat here and I continued to watch, and I'm watching, and all these talking heads are saying, oh, he's going to be convicted on all 5 counts. And it just didn't make any sense to me because RICO, like you just detailed, Joe, is a criminal enterprise.
Yes.
Well, you're not running a criminal enterprise by yourself. There are other people who are compliant or who are working with you. And although they did have previous assistants coming forward and testifying, they weren't talking about a criminal enterprise like you and I both know one to be.
Right.
And so it was really hard for them to get that to stick.
IndependentNewsroom.com is your website. It's Brianna Morello. Go follow her everywhere. It's BREANNA MORELLO. And I think she says Brianna, but she lets me say Brianna. I don't know why but you let me say that, right? I mean, but you go by Brianna everywhere else, right?
Yeah, I honestly don't even notice the difference, to be honest with you. Everyone always asks, like, which one? I'm like, you can call me whatever you want. Just make sure it's the right B word.
Exactly right. Go and check out everything that Bree does. Now, in this case, you've mentioned it several times. He beats the snot out of Cassie. We all see it. He drags her around the hotel room or the hotel hallway as he's wearing a towel. Is the statute of limitations up? Why isn't he facing charges on that?
Yeah, the statute was up. And the interesting part, too, is there was a security guard in that hotel room who reported into the hotel room, was called up to the hotel room after that incident. And apparently he was paid $100,000 in a brown bag in cash to shut up about it. Now,
come on. That's a bribe.
Of course, it's a bribe. And you know the worst part about it, Joe, is allegedly that man who did testify during the trial is a member of law enforcement now. So he's working for an LA, I think it's the sheriff's office. I'm not mistaken, though. It could be the police. But he is working as a law enforcement officer in Los Angeles now, which he probably shouldn't be because we now know that he takes bribes if you stuff it in a brown bag. And speaking of bribes, I mean, again, none of this would have came to fruition if Cassie didn't file that lawsuit in New York City. And as many of you guys know, I'm sure New York Democrats manipulated the law to get rid of the statute of limitation on civil lawsuits related to sexual misconduct allegations. They want to go after President Trump.
In a very famous case, yes.
Yes, and they swept Diddy into it, and Diddy got hit with that lawsuit. He settled his Cassie lawsuit 24 hours after it was filed. And what did he settle it for? Well, according to the trial, he paid $20 million in an attempt to get her to stop talking. It looks like it didn't work out, but that's when obviously the trigger of events took place when the federal government got involved, and the statute of the allegations she was making were no longer eligible to go after when it comes to domestic violence. And also keep in mind, during those instances, she didn't want to talk to anyone. So again, I know I was listening to Fox, and there was legal analysts saying that the prosecutors let her down, but it's well documented that she did not want to talk to anyone and go after Diddy for what happened to her in that hotel room at the time. So I wouldn't even blame the prosecutors. It's a typical domestic dispute, domestic violence case where sadly the victims don't want to come out and speak out against their abusers. Right. And it's sad, it's unfortunate, but it wasn't a RICO case and it wasn't a sex trafficking case, and it was a waste of your federal taxpayer dollars.
Transporting prostitution. I've never even heard that. It sounds like they were calling him a pimp. Maybe not. I don't know. It's Brianna Morello, independent journalist. Go and check out her show, The Brianna Morello Show. Does an amazing job every single time. Elon Musk follows her on X. She must be doing something right. Let me ask you what happens now. So the sentence could be suspended, as you said, could be on recognizance, could be, on house arrest for X amount of time. I don't know if he's going to do any hard time in prison. Maybe he will. What is your opinion on what might happen now in the sentencing? And then does this guy just come back and start producing records again? I mean, what's the future look like here?
Well, I think his reputation's obviously burnt, so I don't think there's going to be a massive comeback for the bad boy record label. But what I do think here is the judge is going to look at the fact that he was respectful for the most part during the criminal trial. He wasn't trying to intimidate the victims. He wasn't trying to intimidate the jury, it looks like. And he has no priors, convictions, I should say. We obviously know that back in the day, there was other accusations about a
Yes.
gun with J-Lo, but that wasn't a conviction. So the judge is going to see that he has never been convicted on prior offenses and is likely going to either go with time served or maybe give him a couple of extra years in prison. But again, the max for each count is 10 years. I don't think they're going to throw the book at him. It just wouldn't make sense. So we'll have to see it and see what kind of unravels here. But again, he's been sitting behind jail bars, I should say,
Yeah.
while awaiting this trial. And again, everyone keeps saying that they think he's a flight risk. I keep seeing that happening all over these cable news shows. But the reality of it is when they raided his Florida home, he was getting on a plane to leave the country, and our government let him leave.
Yeah.
So they obviously don't think he's a real flight risk, or else they would have never let him leave in the first place.
I mean, he offered what, $50 million to let him get out on bail, and they didn't take it?
Yeah, it was some absurd amount, and he was ready to pass over his passport and everything, and they still wanted to put him away in jail. And I think it's more of an intimidation tactic used by our federal government so that you're stuck in jail. You want to get out. Maybe you'll take a bad plea agreement just for sitting in there for a little bit of time. But yeah, like the reality of it is our federal government has a long history of overcharging suspects and stacking the charges against them, hoping that they're going to take a bad plea agreement. And I think that's what we saw here with Diddy.
You know, it's incredible information. Let me ask you about what's on the periphery. We keep hearing he did this, that, and the other to Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
Usher's involved somehow. These other people that are very, very famous somehow were utilized by Diddy. And again, I'm not making the accusations. This is the stuff that's out there in the ether, stuff that's been reported. So what do you do with that now? Okay, let's say that he gets sentenced. He gets out quickly. It's not going to be a long term, as you said, no priors. It's going to be a plethora of lawsuits to try to get money out of this guy. Will other people come forward and say, well, he did this to me? What do you see happening next?
Well, he does have a lot of lawsuits stacked up against him. I actually lost count. A lot of them are rape lawsuits, so people accusing him of that.
Wow.
So we'll have to see how those all unravel. I didn't see much in the way of those coming to the criminal courtroom, which tells me that the DOJ probably didn't find a lot of those individuals credible, and so that's probably why they didn't bring it forward. But again, that's speculation. That's my opinion on that front. But when it comes to the celebrity angle, all of this, Joe, you make a great point because we didn't hear about the celebrities that were engaging in these big sex parties with Diddy. Now, if you recall, I know I did. I mean, we'd watch MTV and you'd see all these people going to these Diddy parties, and it looked like a
Yes.
blast of the best being in the room for these parties. And suddenly we go to a criminal trial and you don't hear of any celebrities being involved in these sex parties. Well, that's really strange. Keep in mind as well that Diddy secretly recorded these sex parties, and that was something he held over Cassie's head as blackmail. But now our federal government has all those tapes and recordings. So just based on the fact that the same prosecutor who prosecuted Diddy, which is Maureen Comey, which is James Comey's daughter, which is the former FBI director,
Wow.
connect all of this for you.
Yeah.
She also obviously tried Ghislaine Maxwell, claiming that Ghislaine Maxwell was sex trafficking minors, but never told you who she was sex trafficking those minors to. Same thing with Diddy. You're going to say that there was sex trafficking going on. Well, then who were these victims being trafficked to? Well, she never outlined that argument. And I think there's a reason for it. I think she's protecting those who were on the tapes because the reality of it is they should all be charged too. If they're going to hit people with RICO charges, how the people who were participants in all of this take their way to the stand. But if you're the federal government, and you want to hold something over someone's head, well, now you've got the recordings and now you have them at your disposal because they're going to want to make sure that you never tell anyone that they were on those tapes.
I'm glad you went there. It's Brianna Morello, by the way, independentnewsroom.com, and go check out the Brianna Morello Show. Follow her everywhere over on social media. Brianna Morello, just one word altogether, first and last name. I'm glad you went there. We haven't seen any videos from the Epstein stuff. We haven't, seen actual really huge, gigantic charges against people who might have been taking part with underage, people when it comes to this activity. Well, the Diddy stuff, as you said, he recorded everything allegedly, and some of the biggest names are probably going to be involved in that. Why wouldn't the government want to just say, okay, here it is, and these people are all bad? I mean, is it just because of star power? Maybe they're involved as well. There might be government officials that we don't know about on these tapes. Don't we have the right to know if our money is being used to prosecute these people? Don't we have the right to know what the evidence is?
I would argue, yes, you do have a right to know what the evidence is. You don't have to see the tapes, obviously, because
Right.
we don't want to re-victimize
Just
the
tell
victims in
us.
this.
Right.
But you could tell us who were on those tapes, and they've decided not to. Now, I'm going to put my little tinfoil hat on here and go
Okay.
in this angle for you, because I truly do believe at this point that the federal government was using it as blackmail. Now, as you and I both know, under Joe Biden, the FBI was a branch of the Democratic Party. They actually did it
Yes.
under Trump as well, but we all know that they are politically biased and they are loyal to just one political party.
No doubt.
Well, if you remember, there was Usher, for an example. He didn't want to engage in any political discussions prior to his endorsement of Kamala Harris. Then in March of 2024, Diddy gets his home raided. And then all of a sudden, Kamala Harris is pushed up as the front runner a couple of months later. And
Right.
then Usher is on stage endorsing Kamala Harris. So listen, I don't know if there's a direct connection in all of this. It's just a hypothesis, maybe at best. But or I guess it wouldn't even be a hypothesis, just a guess, an educated guess at this point.
Right.
Let's just go with that. But the
Yeah.
reality of it is this. This could be used as blackmail. And I think our government's going to take full advantage of that and not disclose who was on those tapes, because you don't want this coming out. And the reality is they embarrassed Cassie. All of Cassie's dirty laundry was aired out in front of the world, like how she was dating her now husband and was cheating on her husband with Diddy, secretly going around and still going out with Diddy and going on dates with Diddy.
It's also nasty. I don't get it.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But again, you're going to see what's happening to Cassie, and you're not going to want your dirty laundry aired out in front of the American people as well.
Well, I get that though, but through freedom of information, can't we at least know who went to Epstein Island? Can't we at least know who was at these freak off parties where allegations are being made of all sorts of sexual misconduct? I'm with you. I don't need to see the videos, and that doesn't need to be publicized to re-victimize the victims. But we don't have a right to know who's on those lists, really, or who's on those tapes, really.
I mean, Joe, I would agree with you. I think we have a right to it. It's just a matter of whether or not the FBI wants to hand it over. Now, you mentioned Epstein as well, and I want to highlight a point because we have a new FBI, is what we're told, this new agency with
Yes.
good people like Kash Patel running the agency, who I know you're friends with,
Yes.
as well as Dan Bongino, who I'm friends with. And unfortunately, when we submit FOIA requests, I haven't noticed much of a change. Now, I personally requested the phone calls between Jeffrey Epstein and whoever he was calling while he was incarcerated. I wanted to know who he was calling, and I also wanted the recordings. And I was told by the Bureau of Prisons that they don't even have it, that they searched for it and they can't find what I'm looking for, which is absurd.
They just happen to lose it? Come on.
Exactly. Or tells me this, Joe, because we saw Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, and I know it was very controversial, get out there and say that he killed himself. People just don't understand what that means. It could mean this. It could mean that whoever was running the show prior to their arrival disposed of everything. Even the phone calls were tossed and deleted. I know that Dan Bongino came out and said that there were video footage, that he was going to release surveillance footage, but we were told prior by the last administration that there wasn't any surveillance footage. So again, a lot of inconsistencies here. I honestly do think that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel are being very transparent on that front. But the reality of it is they're only showing Kash Patel and Dan Bongino what they want them to see. Everything that they don't want them to see has probably already been deleted.
But Brianna, you and I do information for a living, and you do it very, very well. I do it okay. We should have every right to know what went on. And let me take it to the next step. They actually told us they were going to tell us. And I don't mean Kash and Dan. Pam Bondi said, it's on my desk. I have it on my desk. Then she had a bunch of influencers show up, who, by the way, are not as influential as you and me. But anyway, a bunch of influencers showed up. They handed them a folder that was filled with stuff we already knew. They didn't release anything, as far as I can tell, that was new, unless you know an angle that I didn't know about. But if it's on her desk and it's ready to go, release it. It's time now. The people have the right to know. I mean, the one young lady is now dead. The claim is that she killed herself. The one that's in the picture with Prince Andrew, and the one who made claims against Bill Clinton. She's now gone. I mean, what are we waiting for? The American public has the right to know. I mean, then again, as I hear myself ask you that question, I feel kind of dumb, because we still don't know what really happened with JFK, and that's been 60 some odd years. So, are we ever going to get the truth? Do you think they're going to wait 200 years before they release anything?
I don't think we're ever going to get the truth. I think they're going to intentionally protect the institutions, because that's what they do all the time. And I think that's going to continue on. And you mentioned Pam Bondi, and just to kind of put this in perspective, although I know a lot of people are optimistic about her role as the AG, I have to say I kind of figured that she was going to be this non-effective, I guess would be the way, AG. Ultimately, what she did was absolute garbage. She got up on Fox News the day before she did that little photo op with all of the social media influencers, and she told, I believe it was Jesse Waters, she said, when Jesse asked her about the files, and she said, "Oh, they're coming out tomorrow," and he said, kind of hinting at what was in it, and she goes, "Oh, it's disgusting." It was something along those lines,
Right.
as if she read it. Okay. But now that we saw the folders, we saw the binder itself, we know that there was a letter in it that she wrote to Kash Patel saying that there's nothing new in here and she wasn't handed all the documents that she was supposed to get.
It was a
She
nothing
lied to
burger.
the American people.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the worst part about it, Joe, is she gave it to those social media influencers who had no idea that they were even going to receive it.
Right.
They were there for something else. She put it in their hands and then walked them out in front of the cameras and then put a gag order on them so they couldn't talk about it for over 3 hours. But I've got friends
What
in
the
good
heck?
places. I know. Well, the idea of it was to show it off and to pretend like it was this big revealing, but she actually really kind of screwed these people over. And so what happened was is someone in that group was really angry and messaged me and said, "We got a gag order. We can't say anything.
Wow.
You push this out." And I did. And I pushed it out 2 hours before she wanted it out there because you know what? I don't like a liar. And that's exactly what she was being, was an absolute liar. So
Right.
bad on Pam Bondi. I would say she's been a massive disappointment. But again, these Epstein files, I don't think we're ever going to see what we actually want to see.
I like Pam Bondi. I've had her on the show several times, but either she didn't know what was missing from that file, or you're right, she was on with Jesse Waters the night before and just lied through her teeth. I'm not sure which one it is. I do know this. Then there were allegations that a bunch of files just turned up missing from the Southern District of New York, and they were holding them, and they wouldn't give them to them, and she ordered them to give them. This has been 6 months now. Can we just know? And again, as you just said, we probably will not know, will we?
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever know. I think everything that we should have known, that we should have had at our fingertips, is now gone. The reality is, and I think they're all playing a role in this as well, is they like to protect the institutions. The people within like to protect the institutions.
Right.
So like when we're looking at the FBI, for an example, I often talk about how the whistleblowers have been brought back in. And if you look at the FBI's history, the whistleblowers are never brought back into work. That's just the reality of it. Regardless of if their claims are legitimate or not, they're never brought back in. So we have people like Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle who haven't been brought back, and they are friends with Dan Bongino and
Yes.
Kash Patel. But my sources say that they have no plans on bringing them back in, even though we know
Really?
even though prior to Kash Patel being sworn in, Kash Patel did tell the guys that they were all coming back to work. Then he gets sworn in. All of a sudden, it's not happening. I had Ed Martin, which is President Trump's pardon attorney, on my show,
Yeah.
and he broke news on my show. He said this. He said, Brianna, you're going to be very happy soon. We just had a meeting yesterday, and you're going to be very happy. And I was under the impression that meant when it comes to the whistleblowers that they were either going to be going back to the FBI or going to the DOJ to work with the weaponization division. Not the case. I was told that Kash Patel shut that down and that they are not coming back. So at this point, we're possibly looking at a financial settlement, and that's the best that we're going to get. But again, Kash Patel, a friend of theirs, still protecting the institutions by all of this. And I reported on this, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and they still haven't commented.
Very, very interesting. I know that Kyle Seraphin doesn't want to go back. He's already told me that he wouldn't go back, but he does deserve back pay. But Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend, I think they would, and they probably should. It's almost like they're about to do exactly what we expect them to do, and then at the last second they cancel it. And I don't know what's going on. It's like there's something there that's stopping them from taking the next step. With Bondi, with Kash, with Dan, it's just like they're right there. And maybe there's a bigger, hopefully, this is just me opining, hopefully there's a bigger thing going on. And once that shoe drops, all the good stuff can happen. But man, people are getting very frustrated. I've got the 1 million followers on TikTok. I'm killing you on TikTok, by the way.
I know.
But we've got 1 million followers, and I go there and I do lives, and I take questions and debate people and everything else. And the question the conservatives have, the number one question is, when will we see bad people in handcuffs that did all these bad things for the past 4, 8, 10 years? And I have no answer. I don't know what to tell them. I don't know.
Joe, I don't understand why we haven't seen arrests. If you recall, when Merrick Garland took over the DOJ during Joe Biden's regime, they quickly had J6ers locked up. I believe we were at over 400 during that same time. So
Right.
yes, that DOJ was more effective in going after its political opposition, but we're not going after a political opposition. We're going after people who committed lawfare, people who sat there and manipulated the laws to go after
Right.
their political enemy.
Well, these people broke the law, and we're still not locking them up. Put them in handcuffs
not.
now. And I keep saying my answer is, well, they got to dot the I's and cross the T's. Enough dotting the I's and crossing the T's. We want to see some ass in handcuffs. It's that simple.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Joe, and you haven't heard of any grand juries happening right now.
No.
Normally, you hear like little whispers here and there if there's a grand jury happening, especially in DC. But we haven't heard of anything. So I'm not going to sit here and tell my audience that they're out there and they're aggressively fighting for the American people to make good on all of the promises and what we voted for. I actually just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's very unfortunate. But keep in mind too, we're seeing Kash Patel, his FBI, drop documents related to election fraud in 2020. Now, the interesting part in that is just the latest round of all of it was about the fake IDs that were being given out to, the CCP was supplying. They were using TikTok data, it looks like, to create these fake driver's licenses that were then used by so-called Chinese students to then go and commit election fraud in our 2020 election. And we're hearing Kash Patel talk about all of this, but who's being held accountable? We haven't heard of anyone being fired for this. And again, FBI locks that information down. They don't want to tell you because they say it's personal information. And so they can't tell the media specifically if they fired anyone. But the reality of it is these people should be criminally charged. They suppressed this information. Christopher Wray lied in front of Congress when he was asked about foreign interference in 2020. And he knew damn well that it took place and it happened. And so these people belong in handcuffs. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's an aggressive side at the FBI or DOJ.
IndependentNewsroom.com is the website. Go check out the Brianna Morello Show. Follow her, Breanna. Last name is Morello. Put those two together and go find her on social media as well. Great job as always. I appreciate the information, and let's do it again soon, Brianna. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. That's it for Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags. Another one to drop very soon. Keep it here.